I'm Paul Edwards. I'm a self-published horror author and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight I'm watching Maneater of Hydra from 1967, released in some markets as Island of the Doomed. This is not a great movie, but it does bring up a great question, which is still very valid today, which is how much or how little of your story do you give away in your trailers and promotional material in order to get people into the theater or people to buy your book? Because it's a tough choice. Give away too much, give away too little, and you've got a big problem. So let me tell you the story of Maneater of Hydra, as if you had never seen any posters, heard anything about the film, and just somebody turned it on for you, okay? So this is a European film, and a group of tourists go to visit an island where this reclusive baron lives. And he lives on a really nice estate, but he's fallen on hard times, and so he's getting some extra money by allowing tourists to come to look at his great botanical gardens. He's a huge horticulturalist, and he has all kinds of exotic plants on his grounds that would make people that are into that sort of thing want to come and visit the grounds. Other people used to live on this island, but they all abandoned it because, according to their superstitious legends, there was a vampire on the island. So now the Baron lives here just with his servants and, whatever tourists happen to be staying in his villa for the night. One by one, the tourists, as they're staying here overnight, start to die. And when one of them is attacked, we see only the approaching camera coming towards the person with no clue who or what is approaching them. And, just the look of shock and revulsion and terror on the victim's face. And next thing you know, that person is dead, and they've been drained of all their blood, and they have marks on their face. So maybe the superstitious locals weren't so superstitious after all. Maybe there really is a vampire loose on the island. Is it the Baron? Is it one of his servants? What's going on here? Well, now I'm going to tell you the solution, but it's really not a spoiler because this is the whole point of what I'm saying. They gave away everything in the posters, okay? The Baron's horticultural experiments included carnivorous plants, and he has made a hybrid out of carnivorous plants like Venus flytraps and much larger plants. And what he's got is a man-eating tree growing in the front yard of his property. And what happens is that at night, the tree gets hungry for human blood, and it reaches out its tendrils and grabs people and perforates them and drains them of their blood, which is why they end up looking like vampire victims are supposed to look. And so everything that we've seen in the movie up to the big reveal would have made sense if it had been a vampire story, but now we see the truth is that it's this killer plant, and you're like, okay, that does make sense now that I see all the pieces fitting together. Okay. So let's just suppose, for argument's sake, that you were going to promote this movie. The movie had been filmed, and they gave you the job of promoting it. How would you go about it? You might call the movie something like, Mystery of Vampire Island, something like that, right? Well, they call the movie Maneater of Hydra, and in some markets, Island of the Doomed. And let me show you the poster that they put up for it, okay? Yeah, that's right. What was the terrifying secret of the vampire plant? That was the terrifying secret. You just answered your own question. Right here in the movie poster, before a possible audience member has even bought a ticket, you've given away the solution to the mystery. That's like having a Sherlock Holmes movie and, saying, how will Sherlock Holmes catch the real killer, Mr. Jones? you're giving the whole game away in the poster. And even if you don't stop and read the text, you can just tell from the image that it's a plant that's attacking the victim, not a vampire. Take another look at the DVD cover, now that you know what's going on here. They're giving the whole thing away. The Maneater of Hydra. You've just given away your whole story. So people might go to see the movie even though they know what the big reveal is, but you've wasted the one good thing you had going for you, because this movie was lacking in a lot of ways. It only had one big name actor in it, Cameron Mitchell, and he was a big name in the sense that he was the king of drive-in horror films in the 60s and 70s. And even he had his voice dubbed back into English. He's an English-speaking actor. He had his voice dubbed back into English for this movie by a different actor. So you're not even fully getting Cameron Mitchell's performance. The one thing that you had going for you in this movie was you had a pretty good twist. And you've just blown it in your poster hoping to get people to come see your movie. But this is a common problem, because it's the same thing with books. I've got 6 books in print right now, and I've got more on the way. How much or how little should you give away in your blurb for your book or in your trailer for a movie? Because if you don't give away enough, nobody's going to buy your book or buy a ticket to your movie. And of course, you don't want to give away too much and spoil the whole thing. But if you don't spoil at least some of it, nobody will have read it in the first place. And you can sit there saying, well, I've got a great book that nobody knows what's going to happen in. But if nobody reads it, that doesn't do you a lot of good. So you have to find a middle ground. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of how I've struggled with this in my books. And I'll show you where I think it's worked and where I've had a problem. Okay. So my favorite of all of my books is Mourner's Tour. And very quickly, a group of people is out camping in the wilderness on a weekend retreat, and these monsters, crypt walkers, short for cryptid skinwalkers, are replacing the people one by one. So the whole point of the novel is that you have to figure out which person or persons have been replaced by one of these monsters that can, what they do is they hollow out human beings and walk around wearing their skins, and they can imitate our voices and impersonate us. So it's not so easy to tell which person is or isn't really a crypt walker. So that's not giving away too much. I'm giving you the basic premise of the story, but you would get that if you only read the first chapter. You would understand that that was the premise of the story. That is not too bad, because the mystery is not what is happening. The mystery is who is the person. Okay, Mourner's Chasm I had a bigger problem with, because this story has one big twist in it. And I certainly was not going to give away the one big twist in the material on the back of the book, because then you're giving away the whole story. So I had to do my best to explain the mood and tone of the book without giving away what the big twist is. And in Mourner's Chasm, what happens is a young man he goes out into the wilderness of Mourner's Woods with 4 of his best friends, and they betray him and they kill him, and they're leaving the forest to head for his special needs brother back in town, and they're going to kill the brother. And the main character rises from his grave, and which is Mourner's Chasm, and has to hunt down the 4 bad guys and knock them off one by one. So it's basically a slasher story, or a slasher-like story, but it's okay to root for the slasher because he's the good guy. He's trying to save his innocent brother. So that's the setup. Now there's a big twist to this, and if you knew the twist and you said, oh, wait a minute, now that I know the twist, I want to read the whole story. You might do that. Or you might say, well, now that I know the whole twist, what's the point of the story? So I did the best I could on that one. It was a little bit of a problem. Mourner's Cliff is some people's favorite of mine. In this, a group of friends goes hiking, And the main character, Jazz, discovers that the reason that the whole group has hiked up to the top of Mourner's Cliff is that they're there to scatter her ashes because she is dead. She died here a year ago today. And she has to solve the mystery of which one of her friends murdered her before the killer can get to any of her other friends. Okay, that's the setup. You know all of that within the first 1.5 chapters. Okay. But there are other twists in here. If I gave away the other twists, I'd be giving away too much of the story, and you may or may not want to even read the book if you already knew what the big surprise was going to be. So really, I think this is the solution, is to have more than one twist, and you give away one twist and you keep the rest close to the vest. That's the best way to do this. So the first book I put out, I actually did, I think, the best job of doing a blurb, because what happens in the original Mourner's Woods is that the shy, nerdy, bullied girl in high school strangely gets invited to go party with the cool kids out in Mourner's Woods on Halloween night. But the cool kids actually plan to sacrifice her to an internet monster that they've discovered recently online, and this is obviously based on the Slender Man case, that terrible case out in Wisconsin. And, you know, when they get deep into the forest, they turn on the young lady. They plan to sacrifice her, but the young lady momentarily escapes their grip and flees into the forest, and now she's being hunted by the bullies in the forest on Halloween night. But which teenager is really the hunter? Because our teenage protagonist is very smart, and it may easily be that the bullies don't realize that they're the ones who are being hunted. Okay, that's the first twist in this story. Other twists then follow, but if you give away too much, the audience is not going to want to read what you've written. But if you give away too little, they have no reason to even buy the book. So you have to offer just enough so that people are interested and can get a sense for what kind of twists you might be bringing up. The fact that the bullies are after the poor young lady that you think is a victim, and then it discovers that you discover that she's really sort of playing the most dangerous game, hunting human beings, is a big twist that gives you the sense of what is to come in the rest of the book, even though there's other twists that hopefully you won't see coming. So Maneater of Hydra really is a cautionary tale, I think. If you only have one big twist, you can't give it away in your promotional materials, or you've blown all of your ammunition. You don't have anything left. If you want to give away a big twist in your promotional materials, you have to have multiple twists. And one of them, you know right up front, you're going to sacrifice in the promotional materials. You're going to say right away, like in Mourner's Cliff, the very first chapter ends with the twist that Jazz discovers that she's a ghost. And that gives the reader a sense of what is to come in the rest of the book, what kind of a book it is, but it doesn't give away too much. I'll mention something else about Maneater of Hydra too, because it has a killer tree in it. I have to mention, my books are all set in a haunted forest, Mourner's Woods, and I have inserted into the books homicidal trees, not as a main plot element, but just a little something in the background that you almost might not notice at first. Because what will happen is a character will be walking along, let's say, a ridge, and walking past a tree that's growing on the ridge. And all of a sudden, as the character passes, a branch will swat him, and he'll almost teeter and fall to his death. And then, he'll turn around and see, because he didn't see this gust of wind, he didn't feel the gust of wind that blew this tree branch. And, he looks, and the tree is just standing there normally like a tree. And he's like, that was weird, and just keeps going. And, I make it so that the readers can understand that the trees are hostile. Not all the trees, but enough to be a problem. but the characters never catch on to it, and hopefully never will. Hey, listen, if you like vintage horror and classic monsters, you really should check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. They're available on Amazon.com. I've got 6 in print as of the recording of this video. I average about 1 a year, so there could be more by the time you're seeing this. And I sell them as cheaply as Amazon will let me, 99 cents for an ebook. They're also available in paperback, as you've seen, and an audiobook. Hey, listen, thanks for spending some time talking with me about the quandary of how much or how little to give away in your trailers. I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.